Hi everyone, it's Katrina. Number 10. The Tarxien Temples. The Tarxien Temple Complex is a shocking example of ancient ingenuity. It's the biggest prehistoric complex on the island of Malta and an official UNESCO World Heritage Site. The complex is made up of 4 distinct temples at the heart of the ancient village of Tarxien, located only a few hundred feet from the hypogeum. The complex was likely constructed between 3600 and 2500 BC. And while the temples here aren't the biggest or the most impressive from Malta's ancient past, the entirety of the site is something incredible. There are examples of prehistoric artwork everywhere. There were once statues erected throughout the complex. Most everything has been destroyed, but experts have still managed to piece the place's history together. It's believed the complex was used specifically for animal sacrifice. The prehistoric citizens of the island may have brought animals here and then sacrificed them on altars to feed their gods fresh blood. Archaeologists have found multiple altars, heaps of animal bones, and knives that may have been used in the killings. They even found some human remains at the South Temple. However, nobody knows if they were sacrifice victims or if the temple was briefly used as a burial pit in the Bronze Age. Number 9. The Machu Picchu Masterpiece. The ancient Inca sanctuary of Machu Picchu is a monument recognized by people all over the globe. But not everyone can appreciate the masterpiece of the sanctuary's construction. Even modern engineers consider it one of the greatest architectural achievements in human history. Machu Picchu was built on an extremely precarious ridge overlooking a river canyon. It was constructed in a seemingly inaccessible place, yet somehow managed to perfectly integrate with the landscape. The Inca built Machu Picchu as if it were an extension of the Andes Mountains. Juando Menegat, a geologist from the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, believes the Inca built Machu Picchu intentionally at the site of where 2 tectonic faults meet. He says it isn't a coincidence that Machu Picchu is where it is. The Inca understood geology in a very advanced way. Rualdo believes they looked for a perfect place where tectonic faults clashed and where the substrate of the high mountains was fractured. The geologist backed up his claims using satellite imagery and field measurements. He created a map of intersecting fractures underneath the site, which show how the Inca built Machu Picchu in the best possible place. The Inca followed the matrix of fractures and faults in the mountain as they designed their neighborhoods. Everything from individual buildings to stairs were built out of the faults. This is how the stonework was so perfect. By using the network of faults and cracks, the Inca didn't just build a city, they molded their city out of the mountain itself. Number 8. The Ziggurat of Ur. Some might say the Ziggurat of Ur is even more impressive than the Great Pyramid of Giza. It's much like an Egyptian pyramid, only built in Mesopotamia in 2100 BC. It is the largest and most well-preserved of all the Mesopotamian ziggurats. It is a pyramid but tiered with large terraces and stepped staircases. Researchers think making their pyramids tiered helped the Mesopotamians in the building process, whereas the Egyptians made their pyramids smooth. There are many ziggurats scattered throughout the deserts of Iraq and Iran, but the Ziggurat of Ur really is the most amazing example of the ancient technology. Excavations occurred in the 1920s. There was a joint project between universities in America and Britain to reveal the monument in its entirety. When it was originally complete, the ziggurat stood at least 100 feet tall. 3 gigantic staircases led to a gate blocking the first terrace. Then a single staircase rose to the second terrace, and at the very top of the structure was a temple. It would have been something to behold upon completion, with the head priest flailing his hands way up at the top of the temple. In total, the ziggurat required about 720,000 baked bricks just for its foundation. The sheer magnitude of resources needed to build all of it is staggering. The temple at the top was commissioned by King Ur-Nammu and dedicated to Nana, god of the moon. Unfortunately, none of the temples has survived into the modern age. Archaeologists have found some blue glazed bricks, which may have been part of the decoration. But that's only speculation. And now for number 7. But first, it's shoutout time! I want to give a big thank you to Dominic, Kalika, and Leanne for supporting this channel. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this. Number 7. The Bada Valley megaliths. On the Indonesian island of Sulawesi is a mysterious place called the Bada Valley, hidden away within the Lor Lindu National Park. The park is an official UNESCO World Heritage Site, both because of its wildlife and the crazy monoliths that cover the valley floor. There are over 400 granite megaliths here, their mystery forever unsolved. These statues can only be compared to those of Easter Island. That's the first thing that comes to mind when you look at these things. Many of them are partially buried, eaten by the grassy fields. Some are short, while others tower 12 feet above the ground. Researchers don't know who built the megaliths, only that some appear to be around 7,000 years old. They were constructed by a completely unknown society at a time when civilization had barely gotten started. These megaliths were first documented by outside explorers in 1908. The faces of the statues have human features very similar to the sculptures on Easter Island. But because the culture that made them is long gone, there is no one around to explain what they were used for. Were these effigies of gods? Were they created in the likeness of tribal chiefs? The questions here are truly endless. Another big mystery is that archaeologists have not found any human settlements in the area around where the megaliths are. It doesn't even look like anyone lived here to build the monuments. Do you have any theories on how and why these megaliths exist? Number 6. The Kilmartin Glen Standing Stones. On the western coast of Scotland is Kilmartin Glen, a very special and very unique place. Human history here stretches back 5,000 years. There may have been people during the Ice Age, and likely primitive Neanderthals many more years before that. But modern human history started here 5,000 years ago. Kilmartin Glen is dotted with about 350 ancient monuments. Roughly half are prehistoric, and most are within a few miles of Kilmartin village. Ancient burial cairns, standing stones, and unexplainable rock engravings. Taken all at once, the Bronze Age monuments and Neolithic burial grounds form a ritual landscape of baffling proportions. Researchers don't know what was going on here, only that people buried the dead and participated in ceremonies. One of the most impressive stone circles here is in Temple Wood. At the center of the woodland is a fairly small stone circle. The stones are not particularly tall, barely coming up to your ankles. In the middle of the stone circle is an ancient burial plot. It's magical to see the place in real life and wonder who was so important that they were buried in the heart of a stone circle. A tribal chief, a god, person of magic? Nobody knows whose remains once graced the burial pit. Number 5. The gigantic warship. Tessara Conteris was one of the largest and most impressive vessels in human history. The gigantic ancient warship has nothing to deal with megaliths or mysterious sites, but its technological sophistication is worth learning about. Sometime around the 3rd century BC, the Greeks took their naval supremacy to a whole new level. They began to build floating fortresses. Tessara Conteris was a class of battleship not much smaller than a modern aircraft carrier. Legend has it the monstrous beast of a ship was the brainchild of Egypt's Ptolemy IV Philopator. Ptolemy IV was the descendant of Ptolemy I, Alexander the Great's general who took Egypt for himself after Alexander's death. The king of Egypt requested a catamaran galley of biblical proportions. According to ancient sources like Athenaeus and Plutarch, or Calixenus of Rhodes, the ship was so massive it was an ineffective war machine. It was a prestige vessel that may have taken 6,000 men just to operate. It would have had tall towers, defensive walls like a castle, and over 150 oarsmen at least. There is no physical proof that this behemoth of a ship ever existed, but scholars seem to think it may have been real. It would have been used as a mobile city to cruise easily across the Mediterranean Sea. It would have even had a small palace on it to accommodate the king, or whoever was in charge of the boat. It's unclear what may have happened to it, or even how long it remained floating. Number 4. The Borobudur Temple. On the Southeast Asian island of Java is the unbelievably impressive Borobudur Temple. It is said to be the largest Buddhist monument anywhere in the world. Some even say it should be considered one of the 7 wonders of the world. It's not as ancient as the Egyptian pyramids, but it is roughly 1,200 years old. The temple was built around the 9th century AD on a grassy hilltop overlooking the beautiful jungles of Indonesia. Its architecture is distinctly Indian, yet also uniquely Indonesian. It blends traditional styles with the influence of medieval India. The massive temple is decorated in almost 2,700 relief panels. It boasts over 500 Buddha statues and might just be unbreakable. The stonework of the temple, built long before many of the Inca's most impressive structures, was completed without cement or mortar. The builders of the temple cut their blocks just like pieces of a puzzle. They fit together and interlocked without needing any sort of adhesives. Even after 1,000 years of neglect, the temple is almost undamaged. Borobudur Temple was only found by modern explorers of 1815, completely buried under the ash of an unknown volcanic eruption. Realizing its importance in the 1970s, the Indonesian government partnered with UNESCO to restore the temple. It took 8 years, and now the temple looks as if the last stone was laid just yesterday. If you could pick just one ancient place to be restored to its former glory, which would you choose? Let me know in the comments below, and hit subscribe while you're at it. Number 3. The Obelisk of Aksum. Among the ruins of the ancient city of Aksum, once home to the mighty Aksumite Empire, there is one of the most impressive obelisks ever built. The Obelisk of Aksum was constructed about 1,700 years ago by King Izana. It's an exceedingly massive monument that weighs over 160 tons and stands 79 feet tall. The brief Italian occupation of Ethiopia saw many national treasures stolen by the European occupiers. In the 1930s, the monolith of Aksum was stolen from the Ethiopians. Italian soldiers found it in a partially submerged pit. It was dismantled, then taken to Rome as a spoil of war. That's where it stayed for almost a century. There were talks of returning it over the years, but it would be a monumental task. The Italians weren't very cooperative either. It wasn't until 2008 that they finally gave the great monolith back. Now it stands in the city of its creation once again. Seeing the obelisk with your own eyes is a remarkable experience. It's truly enormous, towering over the much smaller obelisks in the ancient city. It's covered in beautiful designs and strange decorations. The craftsmanship was far ahead of its time. The graphite used to build the obelisk was transported from a quarry many miles away, which required tedious organization from the Aksumites. The obelisk alone shows just how technologically advanced the empire was before it fell into ruin. Number 2. The Nowth Passage Tomb. 5,000 years ago, a mysterious group of humans in Ireland constructed the Nowth megalithic passage tomb, also known simply as the Great Mound. The enormous tomb is in the Bada Valley, surrounded by other, less impressive Neolithic constructions. The tomb consists of a single gigantic mound covering roughly a hectare of land. There are 2 passages that lead inside, each one leading to a different burial chamber. The eastern passage leads to what's known as a cruciform chamber. There are 3 recesses inside the chamber and some carved basins where cremated human remains may have once been placed. The western passage ends in a rectangular chamber that may have also been used for burying cremated remains. The burial chambers are wildly impressive, seeing as how old they are, but the site is so much more than just mysterious burial plots. The mound is surrounded by 127 curbstones, most of them decorated in stunning works of megalithic art. There are over 200 decorated stones here, maybe even more that have yet to be found. Nowth is a truly remarkable place that scientists are still struggling to understand. Nobody knows who was buried here or why they deserved such a magnificent tomb. The archaeological site is also mostly off-limits. There is no direct public access, and the only way to visit is with a scheduled tour. Number 1. Stone Circles of Senegambia. In the Senegambia region of Gambia and Senegal, there are more megalithic complexes than any other part of the world. That sounds unbelievable, but it's true. There are 1,053 stone circles here and a total number of, get ready for it, 28,931 individual monoliths. This number includes individual carved stones found throughout various stone complexes and circles. It's absolutely crazy how many ancient monuments are scattered throughout this part of Africa. Not to mention the quality of the monuments. Experts say the stonework was done by an extremely sophisticated group of people. Many of these circles are also found near burial mounds, suggesting they were tied to complex religious rituals. But as with so much of the ancient world, nothing is truly known about these stone circles of Senegambia. Nobody knows what they were used for or why the ancients dedicated their lives to building countless monoliths. According to UNESCO World Heritage, analysis of the material shows the monoliths were built starting in the 3rd century BC. They continued to be erected up until the 16th century AD. Work went on here for almost 2,000 consecutive years. And yet now there is no trace of the people who did it or what their motives were. Thanks for watching! Which standing stones do you think are the most impressive? Have you seen any in real life? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already and come back soon. Bye!